Why no one wants to live in Canada? Most of the immigrants think that Canada is a dream country which can change anyone's life, so they always dream of going there. But on the other hand, Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, with many living in their cars or taking on multiple jobs. What are the major issues for living in Canada? We will describe some of them in today's video. It's expensive to travel in Canada. Canada is among the worst places to travel both domestically and abroad. In addition to being extremely far away from everywhere, aside from the US, its flights are also very costly. Not only is it difficult to find inexpensive flights within Canada, but you might already expect that for international travel to Europe and Asia. Getting a good deal requires making reservations well in advance. Therefore, Canada isn't the place for you if you're hoping to relocate somewhere that will enable simple, inexpensive travel. Winter is downright freezing. Winter is another of the most frequent excuses given by people for not wanting to relocate to Canada, and I completely agree with them. The primary cause of Canada's terrible quality of life and the primary reason I initially desired to leave the country was winter. All 4 seasons are broadcast to Canada. That means cool autumns, blossoming springs, and gorgeously hot summers. But be ready for some severe culture shock if you're not used to the winter months. The coldest winters you've ever experienced are in Canada. They are not always kind. You'll need to spend a lot of money on an entire wardrobe of Canadian winter clothing unless you live in Vancouver. Even though Toronto is the warmest city outside of Vancouver, it frequently drops to -10 degrees. There is no denying that this is one of the primary causes of Canada's unfavorable living conditions. However, you eventually get used to the cold. The bright winters in Canada are a benefit of the snow. The nation becomes a polar beacon as the sun reflects off the snow. Sunglasses will be necessary just to step outside. However, if you want to live somewhere warm all year round, don't move to Canada. Even our populace would rather go outside for the winter. It is the reason behind the snowbirds who migrate south for the winter. Immigrants find it harder to get jobs. Although immigrants are welcome in Canada, they haven't figured out a way to make sure they can work there, unless they are coming from the US. A few challenges face foreign workers in Canada. You must speak English first. Additionally, you will require fluency in French in certain cities. You will find it difficult to obtain employment in the nation if you are not fluent in either language. Furthermore, even if you received your medical training in your home country, you still require certifications from Western countries. If your certification is from the US or a Commonwealth nation, you probably won't be able to find employment without recertifying. This entails completing costly licensing exams or undergoing total retraining. Employers also value Canadian work history. It is more difficult for them to check references if you'd have worked abroad. Ultimately, gaining access to numerous companies can be challenging. Higher-level jobs are scarce in Canada. This is partly because there isn't much competition in the nation. The government controls a large number of our markets, which results in a stable economy but fewer executives. Fortunately, the government has begun to acknowledge the importance of helping immigrants find employment. Free healthcare has its downsides. The provision of free healthcare is one of the primary draws for individuals to relocate to Canada, but it's not totally free. Preventive medicine, vision care, prescription drugs, and dentists are not covered by our free healthcare, for instance. Furthermore, coverage differs among states. Certain physicians and medical procedures that are covered in Ontario may not be in Alberta. This implies that you continue to cover the cost of your costly doctor visits out of pocket. Benefits are provided by many jobs to help with these. Occasionally, they will pay a fixed cap that they will pay up to, or they will pay a percentage of your dental and vision expenses. Although this is beneficial, you will still need to pay for other costs, but it's not nearly as bad as it would be in the US because these costs won't put you out of business. There is a problem in the industry because of free healthcare. Our best doctors leave for the US in search of greater income because they are paid less there. Housing costs have skyrocketed. Purchasing a home in Toronto is now very expensive due to the city's recent housing market boom. This also applies to other large cities. It will cost you more than 1.5 million USD to find a place larger than a shoebox if you live in Toronto or Vancouver. Nevertheless, if you commute from smaller towns or suburbs, you can find reasonably priced housing. You can find much more affordable houses if you live in a city like Halifax, which has less job opportunities. Thus, purchasing a home is not impossible, but it can be difficult, particularly in larger cities. The prices in Toronto will shock you if you're relocating from the US. Price tags don't include tax. If you already reside in North America, you probably consider this to be completely normal, much like leaving a tip at a restaurant. However, I discovered how peculiar it is after relocating to England and New Zealand. When you visit a store, you see the posted price and then have to estimate the amount after tax. Budgeting becomes much more difficult, particularly when grocery shopping. This also implies that although prices might appear a little lower at first, Up to 10% will be added at the register. When moving to Canada, be ready for everything to cost more than what is listed. Phone plans cost a fortune. Out of all the places I've lived, Canada has the most expensive mobile phone plans. One of the more costly options for a phone plan is the monthly plan in New Zealand. It came with an unlimited texting and calling plan in addition to 3 gigabytes of data. You must pay less than 20 NZD in total each month. The same strategy was successful in Australia. A phone plan with unlimited texting, 150 minutes of international calling, and 4 gigabytes of data costs £4 in the UK. It's practically hard to find an unlimited data phone plan in Canada. Still, they are inexpensive and widely accessible, costing less than a month's worth of a Canadian phone plan. Learn that sorry doesn't always mean I'm sorry. It's common knowledge that Canadians apologize a lot. We don't always mean it though. We will apologize to someone if we bump into them because it is such a natural reaction in us. But the real reason we're not doing this is to apologize. It's what we're saying in response. It can also be very passive-aggressive in our use. Thus, pay attention to tone when you hear sorry being said anywhere in Canada. And if you intend to relocate here, be ready to interpret the true meanings. We've got a lot of wildlife and terrible bugs. There's a wide variety of wildlife in Canada, most of it dangerous or bothersome. We have gophers, bears, deer, and moose. Our wilderness is home to wolves, coyotes, wolverines, and many other carnivores that are out of control. The worst of our wildlife, however, is represented by insects and Canadian geese, sometimes referred to as demonic hell beasts. Canadians generally believe that these geese are just plain evil. They frequently try to bite people, hiss at you, and take over entire campuses of universities. You have to contend with insects in addition to all of this wildlife. Many insects are supported by Canada's 4 distinct seasons. There are mosquitoes, horseflies, black flies, and other insects. They're all trying to harm you too. Even after moving here, you never truly get used to these annoying inconveniences. That explains, in part, why everyone smells like butt repellent throughout the summer, especially hikers. Canada doesn't recognize international credit. In many ways, moving to Canada requires a fresh start. Your credit is one way to do that. For Canadians, it makes no difference what kind of credit history you have overseas. You will essentially start over unless you have filed for bankruptcy or have a criminal record related to financial crimes. If your credit is not very good overseas, this may be a compelling argument for you to relocate to Canada. It is, however, a major deterrent to moving to Canada if you have spent your entire life accumulating excellent credit. So these were some problems and issues which are the reason if someone doesn't want to live in Canada, but everyone had their own perspective. Please share your thoughts about Canada in the comments section and don't forget to subscribe.